Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Barca with co-host, teacher and socialist Andy Lipson and community organizer and socialist Kenny Cepeda. We are online at what-s-left.webnode.com. Joining us today is Brian Belknap. He is a radical songwriter who has shared the stage with Cake and Calixco and early train. If you can just help me with that, Brian, it is Calixco. Yes? You've shared this stage with them. And like Andy, who has also been a former longtime member of the International Socialist Organization, you too were a former member of the International Socialist Organization, but left it several years before the organization collapsed. And since that time, Brian has produced 3 albums with the producer, Mike Kuykendall, and as a Marxist has worked closely with Andy on trying to understand the relationship between political theory and political practice, as well as the relationship between the fight for reforms and fight for socialist revolution. Today, Brian will be sharing some of his music with us, as well as the politics, life experiences, and ideas that helped shape it. We welcome you, Brian.
Hey, Brian. Great to be here. Great to be here, folks. And, I watch every single episode, and I'm so support what you folks have been doing here. This is the kind of discussion I wish had been possible within the organization that I spent 25 years of my life in. And I'm just really honored that you're having me here as a guest. The episodes that I miss, I almost always make up, and I think you're doing great work, all of you.
You're like amongst the very few of those cult followers that are following the What's Left, very obscure channel of the YouTube's Matrix, Brian. So thank you.
And proud to be among them.
Thank you. Andy, why don't you introduce us? Start us off with your connection with Brian, your friendship with Brian. Both of you have been longtime members of the International Socialist Organization. We did a former ISO episode on this. If you two, having gone way back in time, if you two have been such great friends, share with us that experience that you have with Brian, because you have talked about Brian a lot on this show, outside of this show, and it seems to be a very influential person in your life, and as well as part of this show.
Yeah. I mean, I've been looking for an excuse to get Brian on the show for a long time. He finally relented, and he's willing to do it now. But Brian's my best friend. In addition to, that's the centerpiece of it, and I have admired and respected his politics, and I think his music is beautiful, and it's what it means to be art, because art is a very, kind of a bad word in some circles, but I actually do think art is beautiful when it comes from the heart, and his comes from the heart. I would say that Brian recruited me to the ISO, and while the ISO did everything they could to kind of turn me into a liberal, Brian did everything he could to keep me on a path of at least understanding that there's a relationship between the ideas you say you stand for and the things that you do. And if there isn't a relationship between those things, then you might want to either look at your ideas and see if you're really standing up for those things, or look at your actions and see if they resonate. And it's political honesty is called having political principles, and I think Brian has taught me how to have political principles. So I am very glad he recruited me to the ISO, because it let me meet people like Adrian and Roger and Rachel. There's some other comrades there that were helpful in setting my political path in my life. But also personally, Brian pretty much, is the same kind of honesty about his personal life that I admire so much, and it means so much to me. And many of my relationships in the second half of my life are really dominated by the things he and I have learned in our friendship and comradeship together. Everything I'm doing I feel like even with my partner Brandy, or even as I love you and Eduardo and Kenny, I love Brian, but all that in many ways is founded on things that I've learned in my relationship with Brian personally, and that's very meaningful to me. And I think in Brian's music, which I want him to share today, is sort of the intersection of his beliefs his passion, of his honesty, and I've often complained that people who are political, who try to put their politics into their art, produce bad art with crappy politics, and that is definitely not the case in Brian's music for me. It's like Brian's honesty and passion and his belief in the idea of revolutionary change, I do think is in his music. It's not about trying to find like a Where's Waldo, but I do think I wanted to have some of his songs on one of our episodes of What's Left, if not just to have them here. And I wanted to kind of hear him talk about them in light of what we're trying to do on What's Left. And I know he respects it. So that's my reason for kind of getting him on here today.
Well, thanks, Andy. And as I said, it's an honor to be here. And I think that there's not another place I can really talk as fully about, that aspect of my songwriting, where it could really even be understood. There's little subtle references. Most of the time, most people really aren't going to pick up on it. I even quote Lennon sometimes. Not that anybody would know, but it's in there because I think that the most moving songs to me are the ones that come out of a personal experience. And 25 years of my life was spent, organizing as a revolutionary on picket lines in the factory, fighting for, immigrant rights and for, LGBT rights and for, abortion rights and all those kinds of things around every conceivable social justice issue with an idea that animates them that in order to win those things, ultimately you've got to take the system down as a whole. And that's the only way it's going to happen. None of those fights come to an ending until capitalism ends. That is the main cause of those. The first song is a song called "Waste Not, Want Not," and I guess one of the things that when I'm writing a song that I like to do is to try to subvert a lot of cliches. There's a lot of cliches around, like "waste not, want," and a lot of things we get told, which I think are nonsense, and that I imbibe deeply of and realize, that's just not really the way that it goes. You work hard, keep your nose to the grindstone, stay out of trouble, you're going to be fine. I found out pretty early in life that's actually not the case. And so this particular song I wrote right after the collapse of the banking industry in 2008, when I was concerned that I'd be back out on the street, and Andy knows. I would say, yeah, I'm gonna be back to that handful of granola, and a carrot, and I'll just fill it out with water because that's what I've had to do in the past, to just really fill the belly. I know how to fill the belly when it comes right down to it, and I'll be able to. But that was sort of the way that I would think about things, and I think that we're entering into another time when those kinds of privations are going to be, likely for an even greater section of the population. So that's what came out of this song. And another thing I think that's in there that I'll talk a little bit about after the song plays is just the kind of shame around poverty, that people don't talk very much about. But let's get to the song, and I'll say another few words that are more provocative afterwards.
Let's get to the song, Brian. I'd love to hear it.
Fingertips and pennies, wondering how far they'll go. Bars up in my pockets, worrying my Sunday clothes. Waste not, want not, the needle silver sting. I caught every stitch in time, I couldn't save a goddamn thing. dumpster, hoping that nobody sees. Then a can of peaches, couple bags of black-eyed peas. Waste not, want not, seek the safe, I pray. But if God just helps us help themselves, well, what good is it anyway? Up scrap lumber, shivering in my heavy coat. Smoke could take me under with the weight of everything I owe. Waste not, one night I'll break the cross of gold, steal $100 bill for every lie that I have been told.
That was Waste Not, Want Not. Well, I was just going to ask you, Brian, if you could give context to it. You said that it was inspired or written of a time, especially of 2008, or when the economic crash, and you knew what it was like to be in a time where maybe income wasn't something you could rely on that was steady enough for you to live off of.
Yeah, previous to that, I had lived on the street and, for a mercifully short period of time. And, I was concerned that those days were coming again, one way or another. Or the current job I had was, we weren't in great financial shape. I work with people with developmental disabilities now. I still have the same job for now. So there was that in it, and a lot of the stuff around hard work and those
like a stitch in time saves nine.
A stitch in time saves nine.
And you're saying a stitch in time doesn't save a goddamn thing. I couldn't save a goddamn thing. I saw the one about God helps who helps them. God helps those who help themselves. That I didn't really recognize that there was all these little cliches that you were just saying. Forget that.
Yeah, because early in my life, I used to write these crappy cliched songs that were written with these stupid tropes. And I think that, when I got radicalized, I actually became my songwriting became better relative to my, to what I was writing before. Anyway, the other thing about this is that I kind of want to focus on is, Merle Haggard has this country song called Working Man's Blues, where he says, hey, hey, working man and working man like me, ain't never been on welfare, because that's one place I won't be, and I'll keep on working. Long as these two hands are fit to use, I get a little tight on the weekend and sing a little bit of these working man's blues. And that expresses, I think, the kind of shame that people have of being poor, because the reality of it is most of the people on welfare are white. And that's primarily the audience for that song. And they also believe that their value is their ability to work until their hands aren't fit to use anymore. And then what the hell are you going to do? And I've done manual labor until I had this job. That's what I did, for most of my life. And I just think that people really carry that shame with them in a really deep way. They hide it. They don't ask for help. That's the reality. And that's the lie at the heart of that song. Unfortunately, he came from pretty depressed Oklahoma background himself. So there's that pride that is really mostly a posture. And I want to cut against that kind of thing. I love Merle Haggard because I think that, he, like a lot of country music artists, spoke to the heart of the condition of working people. But the other piece of that, I think, has to do with this idea of privilege. And I want to talk about that a little bit, because that's the way that if you're white, you have, and straight, and, and male, you have a certain amount of privilege that's given to you. And I think that way that lands to someone who's poor and dispossessed is another shot that I had all the advantages, but I still couldn't make it. So I must be really a worthless piece of garbage. That's the way. I don't know if that I never really hear people talking about that aspect of it. That's the way that that's received. So you got the boss grinding you down, telling you have to work harder. You have all society telling you if you can just work harder and get by, you'll be okay. But if you've had these advantages, if you've had these privileges and you still don't make it, that's where you end up. And I think that does not have the intended effect, I think, that of the people that use that kind of language, that are attempting to get people to understand the impact of racism. I think it's a much more useful way to talk about oppression. It is to talk about the double oppression of people who are, Black, for example, or the triple oppression if you're a Black woman, or if you're a Black, lesbian woman, etc. You have multiple oppressions that you experience. I think it's a useful way to understand it, because there is no, in my opinion, exploitation without oppression. And I think having that frame on things gives you a different understanding of it and a way to unite people in a meaningful way. Because the ability to doubly or triply oppress somebody means they can more easily oppress me. And so there's on this side of the class divide, on our side of the class divide, I don't have a stake in the oppression of other people. Otherwise, you're just relying on giving up some privilege. So I'll never be a reliable ally for anything. Once my moral certitude or my moral, center goes, then I can't be relied on. And I think that it's much more useful to talk about oppression and double oppression than in relationship to the oppression of the working class, than intersectionality or any of the other ways these things are framed, because it doesn't give you any kind of a road out. Furthermore, I also think that the reason why that language developed, and it really began to develop with the unpacking of the invisible knapsack. I mean, I know all the language and intersectionality and all these other things developed, and I know these things not because I learned them in school, it's because I read books, because I was interested in the fight against them. That's what animates me. I saw it, I lived it, I saw people abused at work. I became a shop steward at the factory. I worked, and the cops dragged me off that job because I was unwilling to participate in some racist garbage where they wouldn't pay. So I won't go into the details of it, but I've been involved in these fights because not out of a sense of charity, because charity is worthless when it comes to the fight back. I understood that my fate is really tied in a very real way with the people that were around me, and that's what really animated my my participation in the struggle. That's probably about enough. And it's not to downplay it in any way. It's to actually, the other part of this is it flips the attention. All of a sudden, when you're talking about racism, you're talking about white fragility and privilege, as opposed to the real conditions of institutional racism and the real, you're not really focused on the oppressed and the multiple burdens they bear, in addition to the burden of being oppressed as workers. The reason is because for the people at the top that really formulate these ideologies, privilege is a way to look at it. It's more convenient for them, because with privilege, then you're talking about who gets a privilege, and you're talking about a competitive thing where you want to be able to compete more effectively with people of a higher class. For the people that are not in that class, you really need cooperation. It's not an optional extra. And there are racist ideas that run deep in the class, as we all know, and they're racist and sexist and homophobic and anti-immigrant and every single other kind of oppression. It's the class is at itself in all kinds of ways that need to be untangled. But I have confidence that can be overcome, because those ideas do not, function in the interest of even somebody like me, who's a white male and has only that one oppression that they have to deal with. The oppression is a worker. So that's not why I wrote the song, but that's my reflections kind of back in today's environment. And I'll leave it to you folks. I'm not going to talk that long about all the songs, but I wanted to set the table in an environment where I think these discussions have happened before, and where they can be engaged in a way that's maybe a little bit different than This is not a popular idea on the left, to say the least. So
I think, in fact, that someone like you bringing this type of conversation into the current environment, I think you would be outcasted immediately and shut down. And that is what I see, even like within the organizing groups in San Francisco, the people of color, what people fighting each other on this notion of privilege, and it's so complex when you're talking about immigration, and people that are born here and not born here, and some people that get more educated than others, some people are men, and so at the end of the day, we end up canceling each other out and not even talking about anything. So it's not productive, and even talking about empathizing with the plight of the poor white working class is something unpopular. I've seen people in San Francisco who practice this sort of identity politics that look down on a homeless white male because they should have done better, apparently. So suddenly, the liberal mindset is advocating for the pull yourself by your bootstraps, basically. That myth of capitalism. It's just a thought. And but I do have a question about this song. At the very end, you say, "For every lie that I've been told," and I'm curious. Maybe it's a little broad question, but maybe what are some lies that you've deconstructed along your path? The big ones, maybe even as a socialist, because I think our idea in this show is to question the left, whatever it be, to be honest, to kind of resonate back to what you said, Lipson, about your honesty in your life, Brian, because that's something that I personally admire from both of you when I've had conversations. If anyone cares to know, like, I've been influenced a lot by your conversations, and where you take my opinions and take me serious, and it doesn't matter, we're just people talking. But so I'm just curious about those lies, and yeah, if you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, those lies are what I think animate my indignation, and my ongoing indignation. I was just hearing the pack lies on the radio today. I don't know what to say. I just, the people you learn to read through them. But I used to be patriotic, wave the flag kind of a guy and whatnot. And, I used to believe things like, I was always pretty good in the race question because I really loved music, and the people that I most admired were like blues musicians and, people like Flaco Jimenez, and, it was a multicultural, drink that I was drinking, or whatever. That's what I was imbibing at the time. And but still, I had, I'm sure, inadvertent things that would come out of my mouth, along those lines. And I used to tell dirty jokes at work. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. You know what I'm saying? I'm just your typical guy. And, I didn't think that it's a big deal, but I learned otherwise. And, and for everything that they accumulate. And we finally realized, the things I said earlier about working hard, keep your nose to the grindstone, Russia is the great evil empire, the union leadership's going to stick up for you, I don't know, you can go down the list. I wrote the song before I left the ISO, but, we had been through a period of time, even in our own organization, where, we were, kind of cast out of this international grouping of people, and there's the last Stalinism that was out there for a long time. And, but mostly I really am talking about the lies, the ideological lies of certainly in the song, we can talk about other lies personally, but just the way that it really debases you and contributes to that feeling of shame when you don't make it. You hide it and you bottle it up, and then you take it out on other people. That's the way that it works. We've seen that, big surprise. People are forced into their homes right now because of the coronavirus, and you see a spike in all this domestic violence and everything else that's going on. But it's in relationship to an expectation that's unrealistic that we have of ourselves. And it's dehumanizing. We live in a fundamentally dehumanizing system, in all its aspects. You know, I mean, I worked until my body broke. I've got injuries up and down my body from years of physical labor. You know that make it a question day to day whether or not I'm even going to play music, which I love to do, and you live with that. You just kind of bear it. You know.
Brian, if I may, we are living what a lot of people are calling some of the most divisive times currently with populist movements around the globe, and many, as you pointed out, white, impoverished, poor people are feeling as if they're not themselves are maybe pushed from being or maybe divided and almost seems as if they're being seduced or persuaded to go onto a certain right way with Donald Trump. Do you think that there is division amongst the working class because the governing class is using these tactics to be able to divide and conquer people by identities?
Yeah, that's the old game, you know, and I think it runs right across the right across the spectrum. I think one of the things I think that ID politics has a tendency to do is to divide people into rival voting blocks. You know, so you've got like Latinx politicians that are looking to compete with black politicians in relatively the same neighborhood. I remember this plays out all the time, and so there's a situation I think in the late '90s where Jesse Jackson Jr. I believe refused to support Gutierrez in Chicago when around the immigrant rights issue because of those kinds of things. So the idea that some kind of a natural unity of the oppressed at the top isn't true. There's nothing natural about it. It is really like it's a competitive system, and there will be some steps towards that, but really everyone's competing to get their piece of the pie, whether it's the political pie and they want to be the ones that speak for everyone below them. So that's why it's not convenient to have these kinds of discussions that are a little bit more far-ranging, I think. But yeah, I'm not going to, there's deep divisions within the working class. And I think that they're not going to be, overcome until people get out in the street and participate in some kind of struggle where they can begin to build trust. Because people will be crazy to trust me just because I say that I'm fighting against oppression. You'll be out of your mind if you're a person of color. Give me your experience, your lived experience. You'll be crazy. Just because I said so, why the hell should you believe me? If most of the people that are white treat you in a racist manner, why would you believe that? There's no way you can believe that. Words are meaningless when it comes to that. When we're out in the street, it's a different story. And one of the things that's inspired me today, I was looking at videos from Minneapolis and videos from LA when there are, these demonstrations that are thrown up and, people are like get hit by a cop car. The cops try to come out and grab them. People go in there and drag the person up and just run the cops, literally run the cops out. I saw the CHP being run off, in the wake of the George Floyd murder that ended up happening in Minneapolis. Those kinds of things inspire me. When people are getting together and saying enough is enough, we're going to go out in the streets, and at least in this context of this demonstration, it's us against the cops. We understand that much, and we're not going to let them come in here and fuck with us. Pardon my language, but those moments, and they're unfortunately rare, give us some sense of what happens when you're in the heat of that struggle. But I think that's really what's going to take. You need to have some kind of ideas to frame it, an understanding going in, so you can begin to talk in a meaningful way to people. But at the end of the day, it's got to be out there on the street.
Yeah, the other thing I want to highlight, though, I think when Brian's raising this question of privilege as a challenge to the left, is the ruling class is always going to be dividing people on national lines and gender lines and racial lines. It's how they've held power. It's how they've maintained power for centuries. The problem is what do you do when the left, when the movement that is supposed to represent the best of the working class fight back, takes up identity politics and privilege as a way of fighting racism and sexism? Basically, they're taking up ideas that are literally the same poisonous divisiveness in the name of understanding, feeling like there's an oppression. But it provides no path for fighting oppression through privilege or identity politics. There's no path for fighting it. It's actually only going to be a path that divides us. And I think so it's it's not just saying the ruling class is doing it. It's saying that to the extent that the left takes up these identity and privilege-like arguments as a means of fighting these oppressions, we will be ineffective. It'll end up being doubling down and tripling down on divisions.
Yeah, and I think it's sold as an empowering move. If you're able to somehow gain, control of this discourse, but in reality, all we're doing is classifying people even further, and putting more labels and then not only shaming and canceling people for not knowing. There's an elitist aspect to this also, because like when I came back from Nicaragua and to live in San Francisco, the politics had changed, and this language just became entrenched in the city, and so I didn't know, and I was being shamed for not knowing, and what people would say is, it's not my job to educate you, and you're privileged, you're a man, and this and that, and so it's very, elitist, exclusionary. That and I think we have to ask the question, like, would this gain more, supporters, more, people that are willing to fight with you, or less supporters? And can you speak like this to someone, a coworker, who may not be as educated, as you? So just some thoughts.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right.
I think that maybe this would be a good time to check out Brian's next song, no?
One of my favorite songs of his, Highwire.
This song is one of those ones that is combined in a little bit of a different way. All my songs are really personal. There may be some, political thing that comes in, but usually just a line appears somehow. The first line of the song is it's been a long haul up in the Highwire. I talked to a friend of mine that was in just really rough shape, and that line actually came to me in reference to him, and just hung around in a notebook for a while. And the song just really, really developed though after I wasn't all the way out of the ISO, but I got to see some of the lies that were being told. Some really dishonest maneuvering happened within the organization. People I had respected for years, I saw that were just lying and manipulating people. I don't think they're honest. I can have some sympathy for them. On the one hand, I think that, being, as Lenin said, a revolutionary in non-revolutionary times is extremely difficult. It's a lot easier to be a revolutionary in revolutionary times. But I think the toll that it took on them was that they were really trying to hold on to an organization and use it for with their own. I don't know exactly what their ideas are, I can guess, but it was a big deal. And, and so there's that's in there. There's my own personal journey out of addiction that, that's sort of reflected in there. And just a feeling of just being cut loose. I think that's really what that, that's what that song is about. It's the closest thing I've ever written to a hymn. It used to be a little bit more like a dirge when I wrote it, but my friend Mike Kirkendall, had a little bit of a different idea, so it propels itself a little bit differently, on the recording. And I kind of adopted that arrangement for the way we're going to hear it here. So.
It's been a long haul up on the Highwire, watching the saints fall, steeple the street, over the low road, lit by the ditch spike, follow the shadow of my faltering feet. All your angels fold their wings, throw their halos down. You'll take your own cold reckoning and shake your thorny crown. Devil and me, we used to go walking, swallow so deeply his blistering tongue. I'd always let him do most of the talking, scratching and sweating till he was done. All your angels fold their wings, throw their halos down. You'll take your own cold reckoning and shake your thorny crown. Back on the tightrope, capsized and sinking, send up a lifeboat, pull for the shore. I've been abandoned, baptized and blinking, suddenly stranded, some stranger's door.
I don't have anything to add.
I want to say something about that song. First off, one of the pleasures I've had of being a good friend of Brian is I get to hear all his songs like first right off. He'll often write a song. He'll tell me he's writing something. He's got all these things he keeps in a notebook, and he'll say, "Okay, Andy, I'm done with my song. I'm pretty done. I want you to hear it." It's been a pleasure to do that. I have to say, it's such an honor. But this song and another song on this album, I think is Gavino is the one about Kevin on this album.
Yeah.
Was it on number 2 or this one?
Both on this one.
They're both in this one.
In Lieu of Flowers. Is
yeah. Okay. And a comrade of ours who committed suicide. There's lines in that made me cry when I first heard it, and the opening to this song, the accordion opening. Every time I listen to it, it pulls at me. Brian told me this was a song that was written about his experience and our experience in the ISO of disappointment and bitterness. Bitterness because our goal was so big, and the people we thought we were going to fight this with had promised that they were for that goal as well. And that's an honest goal. Doesn't mean we get there, but we're honestly fighting for it. And it's disgusting and deeply hurtful to see people on such small terms. I'm okay with somebody talking under torture. I don't know what I would do. I'm okay, with somebody who faces great stakes and cracks. I don't know what I would do. But these were not great stakes. These were tiny, puny stakes upon which they sold out the cause, and they sold out people who tried to gave their life for this. And I do believe that we both believe that our friend Kevin partially gives up his life out of the disappointment that came out of that period. That's just, I don't know what to say about the accordion because it's just the song, it's the tones coming off of it, but it's just one of the things It's always runs through my mind that first opening from the accordion on that song, and I really love the song. And the other, I guess, I'll just say that. I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, I actually don't want to personalize this, but I think the leadership as a whole failed. And it wasn't just individuals. It was the leadership as a whole. It was a leadership culture that was built, and I was part of building that culture, actually. I built your confidence, Andy, in a leadership that failed all of us in the end. And I did things that I'm not proud of, but I was always honest about it. I mean, I'll to the best of my ability. And I'm perfectly willing to own, whatever portion of, blame I, as a leader in the organization also, I think that's part of what you need to do. That's what real leadership is about. We're going to make mistakes. I think that, for revolutionaries, we're forced to make mistakes kind of boldly. But mistakes are one thing. Deceit and dishonesty, passing that's another thing altogether. And it was pretty rare that happened from my end. I'm not saying never, but I really think that, whatever my other failings were, I was often too hard on people. I pushed too hard. I did the best I could to lead by example. I don't think I've ever asked anything out of anybody that I wasn't already doing myself. And I think that's the reason why people were willing to, you never would have joined otherwise, Andy. I think, and why I had some measure of respect for a time, in the organization. I don't know how much of this even ends up in there, but I do think even amongst us, it's important. Actually, it's important that those things need to be said, because we're not looking for any Simon Pure anybody. Whether it's for, people are going to come in broken. The system breaks people. That's what it does. It breaks people in their bone and in their heart and in their soul. And that is the crime of capitalism, I think, and the way this damn system's organized. And we're not going to get people that are whole to make these changes. That's not the way that it works. Nevertheless, once you step into leadership, you have a responsibility to own those mistakes when they're pointed out to you, and not to make excuses and to palm them off on other people. And I think that palming off is where the trust breaks down. I'll forgive anybody anything. And I've done things in my life that, my God, I am not proud of, to say the least. But own it. Own it. Own it when it's pointed out to you. And maybe you don't see it right away, but. And I think we had, whatever our weaknesses in the branch that we were in, we had that culture. We had that mutual respect. That even if there were disagreements, and even if they were sharp, amongst us, we were honest about it. And I think that was actually a threat to leadership culture that existed nationally. Because they came in, they tried to break us apart personally, because it was a threat. It really is a threat. And yeah, so that now you see a little bit more in a personal way the impact of and the disillusionment that was there. I had given my life to this, and I understood, that, and I would say this to people, that if we're really successful in our work today, if we really really work hard and we do things right, and we manage to have any kind of ongoing influence or even partial influence in a meaningful way that's a threat to the working class, we're either going to be thrown in jail or shot. That's what you're signing up for. That's the deal. I knew that going in, and I tried to make other people understand the seriousness of this work. People thought I was being, I think, romantic, but what do people think? They think you're just going to, if you're a real threat to them, do you see what we're dealing with? I thought everybody more or less understood that. I don't believe that that's true. I think people were playing they were playing at something else. I don't know. I read the books. It wasn't my first choice. I would rather write songs than read poetry. But I understood. It was impressed upon me through reading history that there's no other way. We've got to take this thing down. And so I put my music aside and dedicated my life to the fight. And I don't regret that. That part of it I don't regret. That door is then closed for me. There was no way I could operate politically in the environment that existed at the time. you know. And I was broken, you know, even more deeply than I had by the system as a whole, because I don't want to complain. Whatever. People have been through much worse than I have in the revolutionary movement, but you know, 25 years in is a long time. And
in the ISO.
Yeah. And you know, I have the same commitment now that I did then. I don't know how it's going to look. I get inspired when people fight back. And something comes out of it. This came out of it in some way. You know, my relationship with Andy and seeing him engage the two of you in a way that's meaningful and honest. You know, I mean, I think that these are real discussions that happen here, and that's why I'm proud to be part of it.
Brian, you mentioned that Highwire was as well a personal journey of yours in your struggle with addiction. Maybe would you like to expand on that?
People can get the idea, you know. I've trouble with all kinds of substances. You know, I'm not going to go into the details. I have ways of managing that my own life, and I come from a tradition where you don't talk a lot about that publicly. You know, I know this is fashionable for people who go through rehab, whatever. That's, you know, that's what people do these days that are in the limelight. It's in the songs. People can draw their own conclusions. You know, I left that behind 30 years ago, thankfully.
Yeah.
You know, but it was a fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a fun.
I'm good. I think you addressed some of the questions I had more about your personal, you know, the stakes, you know, and the toll that this takes on, you know, the work, the struggle takes on your personal lives. Because, you know, I've talked to both of you at times, I think, and get a sense of, you know, that it is, you know, there are some trade-offs, you know, of, you know, but yeah. But that's
not easy. They're not going to make it easy. To, you know, the most powerful ruling class in the world for now. You know,
I do want to move on to the next song, but I just want to say that this line, "The devil and me, we used to go walking," and then I'd always let him do most of the talking, scratching and sweating until he was done. I definitely know what you're talking about there. You know, when there's just somebody else who is no good, but you don't necessarily know that they're doing no good, and you just feel run by them, by their words, by their presence, and it just, you feel diminished by them, even if they say that they're your friend, or they're trying to help you. That's one of my favorite lines in that song.
That song is, I guess it does have that double meaning. When I conceived it, that really was about, you know, the devil is alcohol, demon alcohol,
right?
You know, swallow his blistering. But there is that's the overall context of the song. Yeah. So the things, I guess, side by side.
And I was thinking about some of those people that they would go take walks with you to influence you.
I know. It comes in there somehow. I guess,
you know? Yeah. Anyway, we should get the next song.
Yeah. Again, I have to be honest about it. It wasn't that part of it wasn't so conscious. It was more about like the Bob is doing the talking, not me at this point.
Right.
You know, and I'm, you know, or whatever. You know. But there's all kinds of devils.
Yeah, and that happens to me politically all the time.
Yeah.
The next song?
Well, the next song is really about my, you know, our more conscious exit from the ISO. You know, it came more directly out of the Occupy movement, and you know, I was involved in that. I was like, when people really got on the street in that kind of way, I had been kind of out of the picture, you know, and I was just like, I really did kind of have to get involved again. You know, I think I'd been formally out of the ISO by then for a year or so. It took me a while. I stayed in the ISO for you know, I was even paying dues for a while after I like went on a leave, like a lot of people do. And then finally, you know, you and AJ are like, Brian, what are you doing? And I finally, you know, we cut the cord altogether. And somewhere in there wrote a document together. And we're vilified for it, you know, because we're now apostates, to use, you know, the language of religion, and I suppose politics these days too. But But yeah, that's really what this song is about. It's about that exit. It's in combination with people being written off, really, and having no place anymore in and this is simultaneously the Occupy movement was literally being beaten off the streets. So that's sort of the more topical part of it, and yeah, and I think there's and that kind of stands in for the working class as a whole being written off. So those are the sort of three currents. I think the actual movement that existed. This is one of the buried Lenin quotes is in here, which I doubt many people will be able to excavate because nobody thinks that Lenin's got anything meaningful to say anymore on anything. But so that's my introduction to that.
Okay. This is the song Epitaph.
Well, I folded up my tent and kicked the sparks out of the coal. Loosened up my thumb and I jerked it down the road. I was in the horizon, but the clouds had not begun to bleed. Don't know where I'm going now, I only know I can't stay here. When my epitaph was written, I was taken by surprise, startled by the stories of my furious demise. Hurried to the graveyard, saw the ground was overgrown with weeds. Don't know who's buried, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't me. Well, the barricades are broken, picket lines are down, old slogans boldly spoken, they just ricochet around. Cops are on their horses, straight baton, poured into my sources, other badges are back on. Oh, living on the outskirts of that city on a hill, rumors of resistance from the unschooled and unskilled. The factories are fumed, the foremen have an iron grip. Don't know who will shake it, I only know it's gonna slip. When collected contradictions are conveniently explained, the neglected lose conviction, and what's sacred is profaned. Of the scrawling crooked letters, of the concrete castle walls that won't let you forget every petty tyrant fall.
On the head.
So that was the song Epitaph by Brian Belknap.
Yeah.
Brian, tell us what you said you were inspired right when you were leaving the site. So you want to go on and say more about that?
Oh, well, the song is related to that leaving. You know, there's petty tyrants. You could put anybody's name in that little spot, but you know, the big people at the top aren't so much the petty tyrants, although they have that aspect to them. But you know, they're all kind of petty, you know, tin pot, self-described, you know, leaders in the ISO. A little bit more shot at them, you know. But more broadly, it is about, you know, all the, you know, people at the top that are, you know, pushing people around. And you know, the movement gets driven back underground. There's a period of time when people are talking about the working class again, you know, and class division, and that just got taken over, you know, taken over by the weaknesses of the movement, the strength of the state, you know, It was Democratic governors, by the way, which largely drove that thing off the street. But what I was inspired by in the movement was why people were really grappling with things, sometimes awkwardly. They had the whole people's microphone where you would be repeating things across 4 or 5 different. It was a nice idiosyncratic. I don't know if people really remember that.
Yeah.
It was a while ago.
Mic check.
But yeah, it was it was a way you could sort of broadcast people's thoughts, but it was a little bit. I mean, you had megaphones after all, so it was idiosyncratic, and it was. I think it would have been dispensed with pretty quickly if the thing had gone on. But people were really grappling with trying to build something different, and I found that inspiring. So it was the first time I got back involved in anything, and I kind of did it really a little bit more as a musician. I wasn't affiliated. I went down there, saw other people. For a period of time, I didn't want to be out in the street because it was just too hard. I'd be running into comrades, ex-comrades. I just didn't want to deal with it. I was just like, you know what? I need a break. But when people really get that active around something, I had to get back out there. I feel that same pull around some of the stuff that's happening now around George Floyd. When I first came to the city, it was, that shortly after I arrived, you had the Simi Valley verdict came down, around Rodney King. And, the city was in flames, LA was in flames. There was martial law declared. A bunch of us were swept off the streets. And, I don't like sitting around when there's organizing to be done. Never. So that's how I was inspired by that movement in a way that I hadn't been for a long time. Probably since the 2006 Day Without an Immigrant. That was the last, I think, high point as far as I was concerned for organizing that I was involved in. So.
Well, I think one of the things that stuck out with me was that the old slogans, boldly spoken, they just ricochet around. One of the things I remember being really frustrated with, still actually goes on, and it's not just something in the ISO, it's actually something on the left. The left is constantly overestimating every single solitary motion that takes place and calling it something that's got this inevitable motion in a direction towards socialism, just because it's an active struggle. Capitalism produces struggle. Socialism doesn't produce struggle. Capitalism produces struggle in the class. And anytime the working class or some elements of some sections go into struggle, there's a beginning. They just go into this thing. Here it is. This is coming. This is the next motion towards something that's, and then the other thing that is often done is as that thing recedes, and it will recede unless we actually do have a revolution. The only way any single movement can actually win its demands, because what you said, is if it ends in socialist revolution internationally. Otherwise, it will always be pushed back if capitalism is retained. Inevitably, it will be done, and that's just the lesson about capitalism. But obviously, all these movements have fallen far short of socialist revolution. But even when those movements are retreating and collapsing, the last thing anybody wants to do is admit that that's taking place. And the last thing they want to do is say this movement is either been crushed, or it's been defeated, or it's retreating, or it's giving up. And the left always wants to overestimate the things that are signs of this with the idea of inspiring. I'm going to inspire you by essentially lying to you about the trajectory of this movement, and then lying to you about what's happening as it's collapsing. And that's completely demoralizing to people, actually. It doesn't actually inspire anyone, because it's just a fucking falsehood to try to gaslight you into, I don't even know what, to think you're going to fight harder if we tell you that this good things about the movement that aren't even true. We have to tell people what's really happening. And so that was one thing that I remember, it was that frustration with the left, with the ISO, about the lies like that for me animated like why I like a lot of the words in the song, like the collected contradictions are conveniently explained, and the neglected lose conviction, and what's sacred is profane. I mean, there's a lot of things in here just about how people, about that part of the left.
That first thing, that's from Lenin. That's the Lenin quote.
The ricochet around?
Old slogans, boldly spoken, they just ricochet around. It's a paraphrase of Lenin. And that sacred is profane comes out of Communist Manifesto. So that's how I sneak things in there.
Propaganda, your communist propaganda. Just
yeah, I steal from plagiarism. It's all plagiarism. And Marx and Lenin, you guys steal from the best. Huh?
The line that stands out to me is rumors of resistance from the unskilled and unschooled and unskilled. I mean, do you have anything to say, regarding, especially nowadays, it seems that, this notion that revolution starts from a person like Bernie Sanders and Ocasio-Cortez telling us, that, or even like, liberals telling us how to go about fighting the system. And so, how could someone unschooled and unskilled fight the system if they don't understand, some of these ideas, like Marxism and in the fundamentals of capitalism? Just trying to play devil's advocate a bit.
Yeah, Marx didn't create class struggle. I mean, he changed his ideas a number of times. Like he looked at the Silesian. He was fighting for democracy in Germany. That's where he got his start. And then the Silesian weavers, they educated him about the power of the working class and their own organization. And he got educated again by the Paris Commune. And that's people are going to go well beyond what they know. And they're only going to come to an understanding of even what they've done themselves, and that includes actually revolutionaries themselves after the fact. And that's that interaction that really, I think, that's what real dialectics, to use a Marxist word or a theoretical word, is about, is that interaction between being in the fight and having your own ideas challenged by things that go beyond you. Lenin himself thought the Russian Revolution was only going to be a revolution that got rid of the Tsar, and then you'd have and then people weren't stopping there, and then he actually observed that. But workers themselves were ahead of him. The workers in the Vyborg district of Petrograd, they had actually they were in advance of what Lenin wrote in the April thesis, where he said, we now have to kind of patiently go about making a more thorough transformation of society. I mean, people probably don't understand these references, and people don't. I think most people don't think that it makes any difference. And I'm not going to sit here and give an exposition on the Russian Revolution, but my audience is primarily revolutionaries at the moment. I'll talk to anybody about anything, and I had no problem talking to anybody about anything. I mean, I stood on a street corner with a revolutionary paper in my hand for 25 years, and I was good at selling it because I did a lot of people. I knew what I was talking about, and I didn't talk down to people either. I would, if they wanted a longer discussion, I have a longer discussion with them, or I get their number and I talk to them on the phone. That's how I met people. The same way in the movement. So I don't think that there's, but I do think that it's animated. It's just, for one thing, it's a song. It's not a theoretical, treatise on how to organize. But there's that sensibility. We see it today amongst Amazon workers and down in New Orleans, you've got these temporary workers that were refusing to pick up trash. They got contracted out. They're not even organized, and you see it. I mean, I think that you see it, and people don't really understand some of the struggles in China, which I think I want to bring up since there's more and more anti-Chinese racism, about how people in these massive factories there, 200,000, the power that those people had to shut the thing down. I have confidence in in those people as they enter into struggle, and where it ends, well, then now we do actually have to start, that's why these kinds of discussions are important, because they're gonna have the dominant ideas of the day rammed down their throat, and I think that there need to be people that can challenge them and point them in a different direction. That's the role of conscious revolutionaries, is to both learn from the struggles that develops around them, but then give them the benefit of their experience and their theoretical knowledge so they can anticipate what's coming next. And that's the only way to really win leadership in any kind of a meaningful way, is you have to be able to help people understand their own day-to-day experience in the struggle and point a way forward that doesn't sand off the challenges or the rough edges of what's ahead. But does that answer?
Just a curiosity, something you mentioned before, and I hope it's okay to share. that you read the Communist Manifesto in a boiler room.
I did, as a matter of fact, yeah. I was working. I didn't. That's how I came out of these ideas. They did. Yeah, I guess that's. I was educated out of a lot of ignorance by the revolutionary, struggle such as it was. The guy that, first challenged some of the ideas I had about Russia was a guy that used to be in the Spartacus League. I guess that gets to a question that somebody asked that, there are very little spontaneous struggles. Somebody's always leading something, and often it's some kind of disillusioned leftist. This quotes somebody whose name I forget. I don't think it was Duncan Howells. I think it was. It doesn't make that much difference, except I want to credit where credit is due. I don't like taking credit for things other people have said. The left has had an influence, has radicalized people, and they've been atomized. There's been a lot of people that have moved through, less now, of course, revolutionary organizations. And if you really look, typically, it's not quite as spontaneous as it looks. Somebody that has some kind of radical background is in the mix somewhere, and, giving the benefit of whatever experience they have. And so there's a legacy to, even organizations as they dissolve. And I think that those people are important. I do think those people are important. I think the left as a whole, in all its brokenness, is important. I guess that's the other piece of the song there. Nobody should be written off. I think to make that break is a big deal with the dominant ideology. It's not an easy path, and I think it's important when people sincerely make that break that, like, this can't be reformed. We got to get rid of it. When people take that step and actually, in a meaningful way, put their time and energy towards that goal, there's a lot to that. And I'll give somebody a hearing, anyone who I sincerely believe has made that break, or even who just tells me they have, honestly, because how the hell do you know? And I'll talk to them. We may disagree, but they'll get my attention. Less so these days, and harder to find, I guess. Anyway, you had a question though before, Eduardo. I don't know if it was answered.
Well, it was those same lines, that rumors of resistance, and then the factories are fuming from the format had an iron grip. I don't know who will shake it. I only know it's gonna slip. It seems that sometimes, I'll go from the unschooled and unskilled. I have sometimes pessimistic thoughts, wondering if the folks that are being oppressed because they're burdened by their finances, they're burdened by family responsibilities, they're burdened by societal pressures, whatever, do they have enough space in their life to be able to think about the need for revolution, because they're so burdened by just the pressures of life? And then there's the other part about educating yourself and trying to figure out, how do I come about this in a socialist way, in a Marxist way? I have had these doubts. So the rumors of resistance from unschooled and unskilled folks, it is calling to those that, what I think Hillary Clinton would say, the deplorables that don't have any, or just are sort of not, they're not to be considered because they're just unskilled, they're unschooled, they don't know, and they're not going to do anything. It's the people at the top who are normally leading either reformist ideas or changing and trying to take advantage of people's societal pressures. And that gives me, I think, that stance, I think it's called stance in music, right? That stance gives me sort of a reminder that for revolution to happen, it will come from laborers. It will come from the working class, not just the educated class. And at some point, even if you are burdened by societal pressures, as we're now seeing with Amazon workers, with people who are paid low wages, someone will break. There will be a break in that. There will be this, I can't take it anymore. And I think that that's what you're alluding to when it says, I only know it's going to slip, is my understanding. I think that it just gives, it sort of reminds me, puts me, how do I say it, in my place to just not to forget that really it takes the working class that's going to cause this revolution. And it's not just the educated class. And that we need to not be inconsiderate of them, because they're the ones who are really, they're going, I mean, I don't know. You go ahead and expand on your stance.
Yeah.
Who wrote it.
I do remember what you were saying now, Eduardo. I think that line, and again, this might be my most theoretical. I don't know if it's a theoretical song. It's more about my experience, but I was thoughtful in putting those words in there, and I think that we are many, they are few, and as much as they try to control things, their grip slips, and they worry about that, and they know that. And you get intervals where people are open, where all of a sudden things like, this is an interval right now. There are opportunities within this. People are asking deeper questions in different ways. When people have had enough and you go out on strike and they start to actually talk to each other. I remember an experience I had when I was organizing a bakery where, we were all scared. We all thought we weren't doing a good job, that everybody else was doing. And so we all worked like crazy, not log all of our hours, all that kind of thing. Once we actually started getting together and talking, though, it was just like, well, I thought you was great. I was trying to keep up with you. And those divisions, you really, and then the anger of being pitted against each other. But that's an interval. And you can step into that interval and you can organize. But the dominant ideas of the time are going to be the ruling class ideas. And so they are going to reimpose themselves unless there are people that can actually actively engage those people and map out a different way, And so it's not enough. That struggle itself isn't enough. The grip will slip, but they will put their hands back on it. And that's why you need organization. And that's why I dedicated my time to building an organization that could be there at those moments and engage people. And it's kind of like what Andy was saying before. You only get those intervals, and every struggle is going to have its arc, short of revolution, until there's something different built, and people, are irritated with you if you're a revolutionary, intervening in that struggle all along the way. Oh, you're trying to leech off the movement, despite the fact that often enough, up until now, there's not many revolutionaries around that are doing this kind of thing, or they're buried so deep they don't really talk about their whole politics. Up front, the way Andy consistently does to his credit, that, this is too much for people, so you can't talk about that. And then when the thing goes down, despite the fact that, often enough, you're the ones that are initiating things and having those, sitting in those long coalition meetings or helping to gather, those things together. And then when things go down, those are the times when you really have to push that much more to try to gather people together, to hold them together for the next struggle. That really is, people talk about, the party, for want of a better word, being the memory of the class. That's what's really meant by it. It's an organic connection from one struggle to the next. So the struggles that happened before, the experiences that are built, the real living experiences of, like the sit-down strikes of the 30s or what have you, are brought forward to the next struggle. That's what the real meaning of that. When you strip away all the, whatever, Stalinist baggage, whatever the hell else people are carrying around, that's what a real working class party looks like. Because you're not going to be perpetually struggling from now to the day of the revolution. That's not the way that it works. There are going to be ups and downs, and there are going to be lessons that need to be learned. Unless people are gathered together that have learned some of those important lessons about taking the whole thing down, and most people aren't going to learn that lesson. They aren't. They're going to be pulled back to the reformist ideas. That's what the history is about. I feel a real kinship to the people that died, the steel organizers that were thrown into smelting ovens in the 30s, the people that fought and lost against Pinochet in Chile, the people in South Africa that fought a noble fight against apartheid, only to be betrayed by Mandela in the end. We can have arguments about whether or not the shape of those things and what, but those people are my kin. Those are the people that are my folks. And that is actually a responsibility that you bear as a revolutionary to all those people. If you see, as I think an earnest and honest revolutionary does, that our struggles are all bound together. This is an international struggle of all of us. It goes back, a century now, And there's experience that can be taken from that if you're willing to look and look hard and look at your own experience in relationship to that. I think people don't want to do that. They certainly don't want to do it very much now. They think it's, by and large, that's probably a little too hard. I think people are looking, but there's not really many places to have a real honest discussion about this. That there's not too much peripheral garbage that's dragged in, and people just don't have the combination of experience and understanding to be able to effectively provide any kind of meaningful ongoing leadership. And my own experience is pretty damn limited. I've read a lot of books, and I've tried as best I could in my tenure in an organization that had problems, and I contributed to those problems. I'm not gonna lie, but our actual practical experience is just so narrow right now. It used to be said that Engels once said, Frederick Engels, that the working class in America is light years ahead in practice, but in swaddling clothes theoretically. Now we don't have any real experience. The real action seems to be in places like Spain, where people are beginning to fight back, and the struggle in Nicaragua for a period of time when people realize, gosh, Ortega used to be a revolutionary, I thought, but now we have to fight back here again, or in places like Argentina, there's all kinds of struggles that are percolating around the world in different ways, and they come and they go. The tide rises and falls. Here, I think we're quite a bit behind on both fronts, but this is where we're at. This is where we have to organize. But this is where I always felt this is where the real organizing happened, with these kinds of discussions, because that's not easy. You can't write it down in a couple of words or a neat slogan, or it's complex. They developed an architecture of ideological justification for this shitty system that oppresses us all so badly. And as I said, I wasn't particularly interested in reading about history. I like it well enough. I'd rather read poetry, but I hated the system enough that I put that aside for a period. Put it aside entirely for a period of time in my life. I don't really regret that. Maybe I shouldn't have put it entirely aside. I don't know, but you live the life that you live.
I like your honesty, Brian.
Well, you had mentioned the stuff in Minneapolis, and that what's happening in Minneapolis is important. But people have to understand that unless that struggle becomes a struggle, an armed struggle for socialist revolution, that shit's going to happen again. The police are going to put their knee on another person's neck, kill another person over and over and over again. But this moment is opening up questions about, do we need to be armed? What is the nature of the state? The state that we are so asking to quarantine us is the same state that trained that officer to do what he did. So is that different? Do you think that these questions are opened up, but again, unless that struggle advances and becomes something that actually challenges the capitalists directly at the point of production and what we make and how we make it, then they're gonna continue to get over us. So your next song is last song is "Raised by Wolves."
Usually when I introduce a song, I say a very specific thing, and I just start the song. And I quote Eugene Debs, who said, "While there's a lower class, I am in it. While there's a criminal class, I am of it. While there's a soul in prison, I am not free." And then I just play the song. Well, we can play the song. I'll say some maybe more about it.
All right. You'll come back after we play the song?
Yeah, I guess there's no danger of me not talking.
Well, that's why you're here, Brian.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
I guess you gathered at St. Paul's with your pitchforks and your pipes. I nailed my pistol to the wall, left them loaded just for spite. Some of us were raised by wolves, they kept us warm by our skin. Among the skeletons and skulls, we learned to hide our so-called sin. Eyes were ever blue, mine was ever sound. You'll never have a clue about what's boiling underground. lit a candle in the night, cut my hand around his flame, I'll sit and breathe its feeble light, while you and Cat my Christian name. When my face was full of soot and my lips were sealed with wax, I replaced each pledge I took with a shovel full of ash. Path was ever straight, wheels were ever round. You will never congregate on unconsecrated ground. Be your torches through the trees, because I don't believe in ghosts. Deep in the rustling of the leaves, I see a snake of silver smoke. If I could find my way to sleep, work myself into a trance, might forget the stinging heat, might remember how to dance.
All right, that was the song Raised by Wolves on the third album of Brian Belknap, In Lieu of Flowers.
Yeah. No, the Eugene Debs quote, I think, is related to this idea that, back in there was a time in this country when, it wasn't a cliche to say society is to blame around crime. And there was even a situation where in Detroit, during the middle of an uprising of the black auto workers there, the Dodge Revolutionary Union movement, a boss was killed, and he actually was exonerated because
the worker who had killed the boss.
Yeah, the guy that killed the boss was exonerated. He was freed by a radical judge. It said, if you're going to work people like this, this is the kind of thing that you're going to get. That was the environment of Detroit. People don't really realize, even relatively recently, I guess it's close to 50 years ago now, but, you don't have to go all the way back into the 30s to find these little pockets of resistance, even in this country. There are conditions that people find themselves in where they're just pushed to extremes. And I guess that's the idea of this song. It came actually, in its first inception, it came off of the bombing that ended up happening at the Boston Marathon. This is something I never say publicly, but that's really, I was just enraged by the witch hunt atmosphere that's where the first line of that song came from, where people were hunting these people down in the street, and they locked down Boston, and, finally, and it turns out, they were from Chechnya, who has its own horrible history of repression, of the Muslim population there. And, you want to push people around. What do you expect? So this is sort of sympathy for the person that's now holed up somewhere, and there's also the long history of lynchings and things like that, people steal, people do all kinds of things out of desperate measures. And I just try to imagine myself in the heart of someone, waiting for that knock on the door in the middle of the night, or in this case, for that lynch mob to finally gather and take them down, and have some defiance and have some defiance in the face of it. And that's sort of what animates that song.
And Brian, so much of your songs are, I think, is it my sense that it's a lot of reminiscing and a lot of looking back at how there's a melancholic feeling I feel in your songs. Is this how I'm perceiving it? This is my perception? Is this, what would you say if that is that my perception? Am I somewhere around the ballpark or not? It just, to me, it comes off this way. And in a lot of the reminiscing that there is here, would you say that would be it?
I would say that, the idea of being burned to death in your own house, there's something melancholy about that. That's not a triple idea. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think, there is that kind of reflection, I mean, I don't think they're entirely without hope. I think there's hope in that defiance, in that last, even as a person sitting there waiting, knowing that this is it, they're coming for me and I'm done. There's that sense of, I'm going to try to find my way to some, if I could find my way to sleep, work myself into a trance, I might forget the stinging heat as my flesh is searing out my bones. I might remember how to, there's like, fuck you. There's a fuck you in that song. Fuck you if you think that this is all I deserve, and fuck you if you think that you're not to blame. You people carrying the torches that want to burn me down aren't to blame for the conditions that create whatever perceived horror was. Why do you think these things happen in the world? No matter who does them. Society is to blame. You want to disfigure people with a lousy system that forces people to work for next to nothing, starvation wages in this country and especially in other parts of the world. And then when they do something desperate, you want to put the blame on them. I don't blame them. I don't blame them at all. And there's hope in that. There's something liberatory in that. I mean, that's where there's anger in it, and there is melancholy in it too. There's a sadness in that, but I don't try to infuse hope into anything, but I just think that there is. I would just assume not destroy the human spirit in the songs that I write. I think that, yeah, I don't know what else to say beyond that, around that particular thing.
So why not infuse hope into things? I'm just curious because, like, the way I think about it at the moment is that to kind of be a socialist or you have to have some hope in the good of humanity, because I feel, capitalism and a lot of the critiques that come to socialism is, that's not basically how we are. We just want to, get everything. We do evil things, we do bad things. People will never come together. So I'm just curious, when you said you don't like to infuse hope into things.
I don't want to infuse false hope into a song. I mean, I think that there is defiance in that song, and I think in that there is some, but it's not something I'm trying to inject from the outside, because I think then you get something that's kind of mawkish. I mean, lynchings happen. People did get burned down in the South in their houses, even in the North, in Philadelphia, for Christ's sakes. They bombed the whole block. Wilson Good, 1976, incinerated a whole city block in Philadelphia. Appalling. People don't even know the history of these kinds of things. And there's a whole other ugly side of the Philadelphia Police Department, which, but then it goes on and on and on. And so I'm standing, like Eugene Debs, with the worst of us. With the worst of us. I'm with them. The worst, the dispossessed, the most disregarded, the most put off and put out. That's who I'm going to stand with. I'm no better than the worst of us. That's what Eugene Debs said, and he meant it, and so do I. There's nothing that I couldn't be forced to, given the certain circumstances other people find themselves in. I'm not any better than anybody else. Nobody. I'm not better than anybody. I think
very influential in your life, Eugene Debs.
Yeah. I have a lot of admiration for him. There's a book of Bending Cross, which I think is really worth reading, which is a really balanced, I think, biography of him. There's a book by I.R. Kipnis called The American Socialist Movement that puts all that in context, and you get to see the radical tradition. I mean, in some ways, this comes back to this whole question of privilege. The American ruling class is one of the most vicious, violent ruling classes in history, both externally and internally. Anything that we have, any little bit of 8-hour day, or it came at a cost of a lot of blood. They never gave anything to any of us, and they try to take away as much as possible, and they distribute it unevenly. But the little gains, the tiny little gains that we have, were fought for, and this is not to denigrate the brutal double and triple and quadruple, oppression that people experience. But without that oppression, they couldn't exploit the working class here to the degree that they do. And I think people see that. people do see that. I do have that amount of hope. I have less hope that the left is going to be able to get it act together enough, or in time, given time, I think these things will be able to be worked out. The clock is ticking. That's the unfortunate thing. But I don't know. Working people have shown themselves to be infinitely ingenious in terms of figuring things out and finding their way back to what's important. Once the struggle's hot, like even in Hong Kong, I think that they may have some idea in Western democracy being better. Nevertheless, they come up against the forces of the state, and they're forced to act in a certain way that creates an openness. And maybe they'll have to go. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I just think that the struggle is going to happen. We're going to be provoked, and people are going to fight back. There's going to be constant, endless provocations, and I think we're entering a period of time where they're going to get worse. Yeah, I think that's why I brace it that we're privileged, because there's an ever shrinking pie that people are going to be forced to compete over. People are going to be starving. A lot of people are going to be starving to death, and it's an odd time. While even now, plenty of people are starving to death, and there are people who are genuinely privileged who live in a whole different kind of life that's apart from anybody, even in the upper echelons of working high wage people or even middle management. I think despair is the soil in which fascism grows, and that's where those racist ideas take root, and that's where people are pitted more easily against each other. But I also think that you have to be, right now the picture is not pretty, and it's not, I don't think it does anybody good. I was part of an organization that constantly tried to pretty things up, and refusing to participate in it was one of the reasons why myself and Andy and some other people aren't in that organization. Well, it doesn't even exist anymore. And I think that's enough.
Maybe we'll have to bring you back on What's Left so that you can talk about your personal experience in that organization.
Yes, I think that's another thing. I did want to say something about Raised by Wolves, because what I think is important is, in a sense, it's not right. That song is not necessarily pointing the finger at the capitalist class directly. It's like, it's saying to workers, it's a challenge to workers to embrace the people who've been raised by wolves, the people who have gone through that. And unless the working class does that, we have no future. Like, if we cannot embrace all the wretched things that are produced by this system, and all of us as workers are going to do things we regret or we're wrong, then we have no future together. And if we hunt each other down instead, which is actually, that is the soil that's being planted now, as people shame each other around their masks, or tell people that, the people of color were doing their sideshows, call the cops their National Guard in on their asses. And now we see who these cops really are. We see who the National Guard is in Minneapolis. And even the degree to which people like, oh my gosh, these crazy people showing up armed, trying to fight. Look, they're partly Republican, whatever being spun. But I understand why people are like fighting the quarantines and fighting these restrictions and being armed to do so. And if you don't, then you can't organize people. And so that to me is one of the things that I never really saw in the song, that I feel like kind of just hearing it now and just listening to you, it says to me.
Yeah, I guess I think that I would say let's embrace those parts that exist in all of us, as to make sure we're apportioning and we help people apportion the blame for. I guess to me that's more the. But I know what you mean. I know what you mean. You can't. Sometimes when a bone breaks, it heals stronger. In that spot. And I think that. You're sort of edging into kind of Nietzsche territory here, because I think people are just broken down and limp off into the grave often enough. But I guess I do have faith, because understanding history and having read deeply of history and struggle, I do have confidence, that things can change. But I think that the clock is ticking. I guess that's the thing that is some I cause a little bit more melancholy, Eduardo, as you said. But yeah, I do think it's about I don't know, war on the palaces, peace in the hovels, and I think that goes ideologically and in the way that we try to approach each other with a real deep sympathy in our hearts for the people who are on this side of the class divide and keeping our fire, the worst of our fire, pointing in the other direction. Not that we can't disagree and whatever, that's going to happen, but, really in our hearts, trying to maintain that. We're not looking to create an organization of saints. It's not going to happen. Or to create a struggle with that, a movement that's based on people that are whole.
Do you find that wherever you have shared your songs, it resonates with the working class, it resonates with those laborers, it resonates with those people who have to struggle? I think when you don't necessarily have to put hope, but I think when people listen to music or listen to something to sort of alleviate or soothe the stresses that go in their life, that the music that we listen to sort of channels that experience that we're going through in society with the pressures. It gives us the chance to sort of free ourselves or escape, so to speak. And people who write political songs like yours, like you do, I would think that people would find solace or find some sort of, like many artists and musicians, beyond just love, breakups, and everything that's sort of cliche. I think political music, I would think, provides that. I mean, I have listened to music in the past that, whether it be rap or country or blues or bluegrass, it has given me at least some solace to know that there are people thinking and singing and producing and creating creatively music with a lot of political messages. Do you find that it gives people that alleviation?
I don't really write. They don't originate from a political place, these songs. And I think a lot of times, unless we've had these discussions around them, the Epitaph song, that's a little, you got cops swinging the baton, that's a little bit more obvious. The other songs, Waste Not, Want Not, that has, I did select songs that are more along those lines. But, that said, I do have the advantage of playing these songs. These songs have been performed more on the street than they have anywhere else. That's where I do most of my performing, even still. Well, not now, of course, but
COVID-19.
Yeah. But and I miss it. I do miss it. And there are. I'm thinking about some of the people, like some of the homeless people that are out there that come by, and these songs in particular, they do well. One of the nice things about playing songs in the street, I know a lot of songs, my own, and I got 7 or 8 hours worth of repertoire, and a lot of these songs people don't know, even the ones that aren't mine, because I don't play songs necessarily particularly popular. But people have a sense for a song, what a good song is, and they relate. They I used to really love John. Well, I still love John Prine. He's recently passed. I'll play a John Prine song. People won't know that it's his, or won't have even heard it before, and they'll ask me if it's on the record, and they'll, and I'll say, well, so people do get a sense of that. I think people do relate to that. I think more than anything else, I think people relate to. I try to inhabit the songs I play when I play them, and I'm not fucking around. And I think that's the only reason. I don't have a great singing voice. I'm not a particularly good musician. Not really. I've managed to sort of figure out how to put over a song with the limited abilities that I have. I'm not fucking around, and I think people see that. And I think that's what creates curiosity and some interest.
Particularly when you think about, there are people who might be watching this, but if you're not watching this, how many different instruments were getting played during this episode? One person playing an accordion, a mandolin, a slide guitar, another guitar, a kick drum, what are those things going like this? What is that? Hi-hat. All these sounds people just heard, that was one person making music.
I mean,
The second hardest working person in show business.
If I may, Brian, when did you start, or what got you inspired to get into music, or how did this all begin? I mean, those are a lot of instruments that Andy just pointed out. Did you just, is this your channel? This is your way of expression? How did you get started? What origins, if you can indulge me?
Oh, I just really love music, and I kept getting inspired to, I just love all these different sounds of all these different instruments, and I would find another instrument, and I'd hear a whole tradition, like around the accordion, from Cajun to Tex-Mex to Argentinian tango, and Balkan folk music, and waltzes and French chanson. That's just one instrument. Then there's the blues. There's slide that has the blues and the country stuff, and South African music that's played on. There's bluegrass music has its roots in a skin pulled over a drum and a string running across it that comes from Africa. And a lot of it mixed down in New Orleans. And there's a reason why that music is it's whole other. I get finding my ways to these different instruments, and I like the sound of them all, so I never figured I'd be able to have a band where I could have other people play them, so I learned how to play myself. I put a lot of time in, and I kind of
don't think that's talent.
I know people who really, they can pick something up, and it doesn't come easy to me. It got easier as I learned other instruments, but even putting this together, it took time to. It just doesn't come easy to me, but I really love it. I just really love it so much that I'm willing to put into the kind of time that is, kind of my hands are really messed up, partially from factory work, from practicing for, a lot of hours, to be able to do anything. And my ears are shot, from putting headphones on and trying to play with records and having it up too loud. And worth it though. I just love playing so much. I love being in the middle of a song and having it. And you saw some of it, but there's really nothing for me quite like being on the street and having already played for an hour and feeling settled in and just having music be part of whatever's happening out there. That to me is just one of the most beautiful things in the world, because it's not elevated, it's not apart. People can kind of come and go. They can take what they want from it and leave the rest. And people stop, and I can have little interactions with them. I can be part of their day a little bit, or part of their evening, or morning, or whatever it ends up being. And God, I miss that. And my fear is that they're going to sanitize the streets to the point where it's not even possible.
Yeah.
And I'm going to lose touch with the people that people who will never be able to, or aren't likely to be able to play anything to get into a club or something else. People that are just sit around at the BART station when I'm playing, that have nowhere else to go, that I get to know when I'm out there. And I was out there too, and they kind of fucking know it. And I'm still out there on the street, and I'm with them. I'm fucking with them, and they know that. And I am with them. I always do.
And sometimes it's in those places like the train station or the streets where you don't know what's going on. At least for me, I'll speak for myself. I remember being in Boston and being in whatever mood I was, waiting for the train when I would take the underground. And there would be some musician to my right playing the cello, and to my left, someone else playing the banjo. And there is a shift in mood, or as I was saying earlier, and maybe this not might be your intention, but for me, on personal experience, it provided either a solace, or it shifted my mood, or it made me think about something, or the messages that were underlying in those lyrics gave me something to ponder about. Those are the spaces, I think, in the streets, what I find we still need to publicly keep, we need to claim and occupy. And with this, who knows what's going to look like now. But I understand what you're saying when you say that those are the spaces that you would like to still have exist and for those places not to be too sanitized, for people to congregate, for people to be in the ambience of just the street life.
Yeah, I don't want them to be sanitized at all. And I do agree with what you're saying. I come into my better self when I'm out there playing for a period of time. And if I can't be out there playing for a period of time, it's not good for me. You know, it's not good for my mental health. I feel like something dies inside of me if I can't be having those interactions. You know, it's the way it goes, I guess. But, you know, as long as I can drag my shit out there and I'm not getting, you know, as long as I can physically do it, you know, I'll do it until they physically stop me. Right now, it doesn't make any sense because there's nobody out there anyway. And, you know, the cops would be on pretty fast. And I've already had experience, you know, a certain amount of that, you know.
You're talking about in San Francisco?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I get run off, you know, fairly often. You know, it's the only thing that can stop me. You know, I've had broken people try to steal shit from me and whatnot. And, you know, I've been attacked once or twice. But by people who are just really, you know, wigged out. Usually anything that comes at me that's not the cops, it doesn't stop me from playing. I can deal with it. You know what I mean? Usually with, corny as it sounds, the more I can kind of come to that loving place of understanding, that keeps about 99% of it off me. You know, of anything that comes where someone's, and even if someone's pretty messed up, you know, it's, if you're not engaging them, you know, on that level, you're probably going to be okay out there, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get robbed, you know, that's another thing, but whatever. That's only happened a couple of times. You know, I chased the person down. I couldn't help myself. Because, you know, fuck you. You know, you're not going to take my shit. But I had to love my heart still somewhere. But, you know, well, and the person got caught. And, you know, I wasn't going to press charges on it. You know, they were some poor person that, you know, it's like, no, let them go. Okay, you know, I don't want them. I don't want them to suffer just because I'm out here on the street and they're desperate. The fuck is that? No, let them go. That's not any charge. You know, so yeah. Anyway, maybe that's not a bad place to end. Some of us, after all, were raised by wolves. I'm one of them.
Yeah, this might be a good place to wrap up. I think what I like about this, just on a personal note, this doesn't have to be recorded, is that this is a great break, Brian, from what we have been doing. I just was telling Andy on the phone that I'm so appreciative that we finally have something like art, in this case music, is being introduced. And this is the very first time we're doing an episode with music and politics at the same time. And you're embedding some of the current events that are happening, like in Minneapolis. And so I appreciate that, Brian, for you being the very first person. Hopefully we'll have more of you and others to share with us the creative energies that they are putting out there for the world. In this case, you're sharing with SF, and hopefully that continues.
Well, thank you. It's you know, it really is. It's an honor to be part of these discussions. As I said, I listened to all of them, and maybe this will be circulated broadly enough that it'll destroy what's left of my music career. And I'll be left just with the streets. Just leave me with the fucking streets. Give me my corners. Fuck the rest of it.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely glad we were able to do this, and it's actually I'm glad to be able to have a chance to listen to you speak more in depth about songs. I mean, we spent hours together, but we don't necessarily, some of the stuff didn't know before, and not particularly around, you know, when I was thinking about Raised by Wolves or Waste Not, Want Not. So this is definitely special to me to have you here, Brian, and but to have this now on record and be able to have this for the rest of my life, and just a mark of I feel like you make great music, and it's inspired by what I think is great thinking and deep thinking, and feeling, and I'm definitely glad to be able to kind of give it a showcase.
It's giving me insight. Oh, go ahead, Kenny. Sorry, I just give insight into your relationship, how deep you both go, and just how far back. I meant to say, not deep. How far back? That was insightful.
My first thought is that I was going to ask you, for you to say some words about what you would say to a young, socialist revolutionary, but I decided not to ask it because I think you've already done it. Like the whole episode is like just like you listen something that I think I will have for the rest of my life, appreciate, and that's why I respect you both, because and I hope I can get to learn more from both of you, because obviously you're both almost out of the game. That's the reality.
That's the story.
And we are here. We're gonna be saddled with stuff. So I am so glad that you were able to do this episode. And that it definitely means a lot to me.
Thanks, Kenny. Thank you so much. I don't know what. I'm glad you're able to take something from it. The main thing I would say to somebody young, I know you didn't ask the question, is I guess the minute somebody tells you that, trust them, they'll take it from here. Stop what you're doing, and they'll that particular thing, whether it's okay now you can vote for me or you can do this, or the moment something just really doesn't sit right with you, something doesn't match up with your experience that somebody is saying, trust that instinct, and for the love of fucking Christ, don't take it from me. Not necessarily will, but I'm serious about that, I'm serious about that build your own experience. But I really am honored to be here. And I think that, I've watched the show, I've watched it from its inception. I've really, I've been inspired by, the willingness to kind of engage a broad spectrum of ideas that started between you, Andy, and Eduardo. And then when you came in and you brought your experience and, our conversations offline as well, Kenny, I'm touched. I'm touched. And it's an honor. It really is an honor to be here. I don't know where this goes. I'm glad I was able to contribute at least something here to you folks. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Brian.
So that does it for this week's episode. We just had a conversation with Brian Belknap, who is a radical songwriter who has shared the stage with Cake and Calexico and Early Era Train. And we hope that we invite you again so you can come on and share other music and your political perspective as well, Brian, in the future.
Brian, I have this idea that at some point we're going to need to have a discussion about what kind of revolutionary organization we need. That's coming somewhere down the line.
Okay. We'll start over the kitchen table. I don't entirely know.
That's exactly what. So
yeah.
That's why it's going to be called the kitchen table.
What's Left is a weekly political podcast / channel challenging the mainstream left. We post information about our topics and our guests on the episode notes wherever you found this episode or on our blog at what-s-left.webnode.com. You can find past episodes of this podcast / channel there and connect with us. I want to remind folks, if you like anything that you have heard here, please share your favorite episode. Or rate, review, and subscribe to any of our 5 platforms on iTunes Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, Bitchute, or YouTube. And if you would like to give us feedback about something you've heard or suggest something for us to cover, contact us through our blog. I'm Eduardo Barca with co-hosts Andy Lipson and Kenny Cepeda. Thank you, Brian, once again. And everyone stay safe and wash your hands. We all see you next time.